On second thought, let's get back into the fort. The strange creature flowed like water as it moved, with all the grace of a weasel or a ferret. A speed and agility that made no sense given the incredible weight the creature must have had. Every step sent up sparks and cracked cobblestones. The companions scrambled, climbing into the fort as fast as they could. Miria vaulted over the squid and landed in the front seat, turning the ignition as hard as she could, while Edryk, desperate to give the creature something else to pay attention to, threw a fistful of rations at it. They tinkled pointlessly off of the creature's head, eliciting another deep, rumbling hiss. And then it picked up speed, moving with an alarming swiftness. Wherever the sun caught its mane, it sent up sparks of almost blinding golden light. Miria peeled out with the van, trying to outpace the creature as it snapped at the rear bumper.
Are we losing it?
Edryk glanced out the rear window and looked the creature straight in its shimmering metallic eyes. No! Drive faster! But the creature's impossible number of legs continued to pump, throwing up sparks and sending up chips of rock as it kept pace with the van. Miria cursed as she felt the engine beginning to shudder, acutely aware that this device hadn't received any kind of maintenance in years. And then, letting go of the wheel, well aware that the suspension was going to pull it to the side of the road quickly, she intoned the only spell she had left for the day and threw it hard into the crystalline matrix above her head.
Everybody, hang on!
And then the van lifted off the road, rising up to the height of the treetops. The shimmering metallic creature coiled and leapt. Its metal teeth rang like a gong as its jaws snapped shut just inches shy of the axle. And then it crashed back down to the cobbles, sending chips of rock flying in all directions, and letting out one final frustrated hiss before slinking back into the emerald trees beneath. Welcome to Swords Against Madness, an experiment in gonzo storytelling and solo roleplaying. I'm playing a solo game of Swords and Wizardry, amplified by other classic role-playing games like Traveller, and accompanied by solo role-playing tools like the Mythic Game Master emulator. First I play the game, then I turn it into a psychedelic sword and planet audio drama for your entertainment. Swords and Wizardry is based on the original 1974 through 1977 rules to Dungeons & Dragons. It is trippy, fast-paced, and lethal, just the way I like it. There will be no protection for player characters when the dice decide that their number is up. But I do keep this story PG, or at least what passed for PG in the 1980s. If you didn't see it in Temple of Doom, Goonies, or Gremlins, you won't hear about it here. So reload that three-bladed sword. Get comfortable in your studded leather kirtle or your chainmail bikini. Fire up the wizard band. It's time to get weird. So what just happened there? Well, I just got a reminder of just how in over their heads my player characters are. When I designed the encounter table for Amber, I wanted to give the place a feeling of the dark divine and the noble fiendish. A place where the light shines so bright, it scalds, it scorches, it purifies the unbeliever with holy fire. And a place with bizarre, needlessly powerful wild beasts. Some of the encounters on the table include things like shock troops from the forces of chaos, lawful titans, Johnny or Arcane wandering the plains looking to trade magical wares, sirens, griffins, and lucrata. I intentionally paid zero attention to balance in this setting. Some of the creatures here would be immensely overpowering, others reasonable encounters. Very few of them would have been something easy for the party. After all, we're not on Orbis anymore. So one of the creatures I threw on there was the Aurumvorax, which is a pretty obscure D&D monster. The basics of this particular piece of nightmare fuel is to take a weasel and add a few extra legs, but then make it hungry to eat both meat and gold, and give it the ability to process the gold into its claws, its fur, and its teeth, giving it an armor class way better than a man in plate mail, and weapons that rip right through armor. The pelts of these creatures are worth tens of thousands of gold, their teeth and claws likewise, but they are no picnic to hunt. Although, to be honest, I've forgotten just how terrifying they were when I tucked them on one of the least likely encounters on this table. The Aurumvorax is a 12-hit die creature, with numerous attacks per round doing a hearty amount of damage. And because of its composition, the creature weighs several tons. Had my player characters run into it on foot, they would pretty much have been guaranteed to be dead. As it was, they had a motor vehicle, so I decided to give them a chance to escape. It started with a surprise roll, and thankfully, the Aurumvorax was surprised and the party wasn't. I then gave each of them a dexterity check to get into the van and get the doors closed in time. Thankfully, everybody rolled it. But that's when things basically came down to initiative. If the party won, they'd be able to turn this into a chase. If they lost, the Aurumvorax would go straight for attacking the van, rather than the people inside. I looked at a handful of OSR clones before deciding which one's rules for motor vehicles I would use, and yes, there was a few out there to choose from. I've decided that the Ford Econoline has an armor class of 13, and has 50 hit points. Because it is an inanimate object with no tissue or the like, things like critical hits don't count, and normal attacks only deal half damage. It has to take something particularly destructive like a fireball to do full damage to the van. I'm giving it an effective speed score of 24 for all intents and purposes. But if it dips below half hit points, its speed will also be cut in half. Obviously, the only way to heal it is through spells like Make Whole, or through the attention of a skilled mechanic, which the party are decidedly not. Thankfully, I managed to win the initiative roll and put the pedal to the metal. But the Aurumvorax gave a pretty hearty chase. It has a ridiculous speed score for a creature that's supposed to weigh several tons. And unless the player characters took some kind of special measures, it would be a test to see which got tired first. A 5-ton metal weasel, or a beat-up 1970s van. I will confess, having played with my older cousin's pet ferret a few times, my money was on the weasel. But I consulted Mythic anyway, and it confirmed, yes, they weren't going to be able to just drive away from the Aurumvorax without doing something additional. Thankfully, Miria had some spells left. Nothing that would do more than annoy the Aurumvorax with its 72 hit points. Although, to be fair, I ruled that as she was casting the spell, the weasel would get one attack on the van, and if he managed to do enough damage, the thing simply wouldn't take off. The dice gods were with me, and I rolled a natural 2 on the attack roll. And so I was left with a short, sweet, but terrifying chase. A pattern I figured would repeat itself quite a few times before I finished wandering the plains. I will drop a variation of the Aurumvorax's stats in the show notes, as well as the rest of the encounter table for traveling across Amber, and an explanation of what some of those encounters mean. Even after the beast was gone, they decided to fly low and slow. None of them had much interest in being easy pickings for another creature like that may be lurking at the edge of the forest. And Miria had even less interest in running into whoever lived in a crystal castle like that. The memory of her nephew's ultimatum was still fresh on her mind. How it had cost her decades of contacts, friends, familiar places. How she'd had to keep fleeing further and further from Henkyo, until the distance from home was a gulf that spanned hundreds of parsecs. A cold, empty place that she could feel in her bones, even if she'd never really wanted to go back to it. How it had driven her into the arms of the Trossi, the one syndicate you could be guaranteed would never play nice with any government. The memory of having to work with them caused her to brush her shoulder where the ultraviolet tattoo sat, marking her as an affiliate of the gang. The familiar knot in the stomach, and bile in the mouth. You're thinking of a home you can't go back to. Kale set down his half-understood comic book. folding it in his lap, and turning in the passenger's seat to face her.
How could you tell?
It's the look on your face. It's one I've seen in the mirror more than a few times.
So much for my vaunted poker face.
I can't say as I know what poker is, but I'm gonna guess it's a game that requires a lot of lying, like Yellow Fly.
Pretty much. I used to be pretty good at it, too.
Ha! No surprise there. And don't worry, you still carry some mystique.
That's strangely comforting. If you weren't flirting with me, I'd even think it was true.
Me? Flirting with you? Ha! Believe me, if I was flirting with you, you'd know it. I would be bowing and taking off my hat and writing stupid sonnets about the mysterious woman from beyond the stars.
And no doubt her capricious and stubborn ways.
My words, not yours. Miria couldn't help but smile in spite of herself. And Kale, with a smirk, put his feet up on the dashboard and returned to his comic book. He was good, she'd hand him that. And more importantly, for the first time in days, she felt happier, safer because of it. It was good to feel normal for a moment. She was even glad that the radiation burns hid that she was blushing.
Do you enjoy old school RPGs? Do you love stories of sword and sorcery? Are you tired of the typical actual plays and long, unedited podcasts? Then look no further than Legends from the Fireside, a hybrid storytelling RPG podcast. A podcast filled with tales of adventure and heroism, all at the mercy of the roll of the dice. There's no telling where the story will go and where we will end up. No life is sacred, and no one's survival is guaranteed. You can find the show on all major podcast platforms, and we hope you enjoy Legends from the Fireside.
As they had suspected, the road slowly curved and wound, and generally stayed on course with the squid's tentacle. And it was nearly impossible to mistake their destination once they saw it. A gigantic stone hoop, wrapped in metal wire, decorated with strange glyphs. It sat upright on a dais shaped like a coiled serpent, bounded by obelisks with markings that you didn't need to be able to read to understand were some kind of warning. This portal had no guards. It didn't seem to need them. The obelisks around them hummed with a strange arcane energy that caused the all-knowing to recoil inside Miria's mind. A magical warding designed to keep the unwelcome out. Miria found that she could cross the space between the obelisks, but barely. Every step she took towards it was slow, heavy, painful. She felt as though a great invisible hand had placed itself on her face and was pushing her back. Edryk, on the other hand, crossed with such ease he hardly noticed Miria's struggle. Nor did the squid in the bag over his shoulder provide much resistance or difficulty. There was a small pedestal before the great ring. It rose up from the coils, shaped like a hungry dragon's mouth, its maw open to the sky. Opals the size of fists set in its eye sockets. Its foremost fangs in shining bronze, stained an ominous green. I'm guessing we have to make an offering of some sort to open the gate. Miria nodded to the dagger-like fangs.
I'll give you 2 guesses as to what they want, and the first one doesn't count.
No, indeed. I'm pretty sure I know exactly what they want. The question is, which one of us is going to give it?
We'd better make it me. I have enough energy to unleash one more warp incantation. But if I did, I kind of get the impression my head would explode. I'd really feel stupid if we ran into something on the other side of that gate, and I lost my head, cast my spell, and, well, lost my head. Best remove any temptation to move my hands to sling the warp.
Once she had crossed the threshold between the obelisks, the ward stopped pushing on her. it was instant relief. And she got the impression that had he been free of her head, the all-knowing would have found it an impassable barrier. Letting out a ragged breath, Miria placed her palm against the tip of one of the fangs and raked it upwards, cutting open her palm. Then she clenched her fist over the cavernous throat and let drops fall down into it. The two opals on the sides of the head flared up with an indigo witch light, and the ground shook for a moment as a vibrant purple haze filled the ring like a soap bubble stuck in a hoop. And then the haze receded, and through it they could see a dismal beach under a gloomy, raining sky. The smell of brackish water, dead fish, reptile, and decaying flesh all wafted through, carried on a chill, wet wind. Well, that looks cheery.
We go to all the best places.
But the spells in the van were waning, and they could see no way to get the van up to the portal if it couldn't fly. And so, avoiding the sinking feeling in their guts, they climbed back into the econoline, and Miria directed it to lift off gently and float through the portal before setting down on the other side. On this side, the portal was a gigantic hoop of driftwood and bone, tied together with sinew, propped up on the ribs of some great creature. A dismal gravel beach spread out in all directions around them, giving way off to their right to a dense brown salt marsh. It was impossible to tell if this world had a sun. The clouds were the color of deep earth stone, and the mist that fell stung their skin with its chill. Then as they turned their heads following the horizon, they saw it. A scaly body so vast it carried its own gravity. Neither head nor tail, no particular features could be seen. Only a long, dense body of muscle, thicker than a house is tall, covered in scales twice the size of shields, shining wet in the rain, a strange navy blue. The serpentine form reached like a landmass out to the sea, disappearing only when the water got incredibly deep. Even then, coils crested the water in places, creating islands of scaly flesh as far as the eye could see. In places, mud and dirt had accrued around it, creating small islands with scaly mounds in the center. The charnel stench forced each of them to fight to hold down their stomachs, for it was clear that the colossal thing had been dead a long time, and yet it did not look like it was truly rotting, not all of it in any case. Lazy columns of flies rose from the tissue in places, and in others they could see that wasps had nested under the scales for generations, leaving the gaps in the scales cobwebbed with matrices of paper. An ecosystem built to thrive on eternally freshly dead flesh. Were it not for a few tall grasses and sickly black trees, it would be impossible to tell how far away the carcass was. And focus could be difficult, as the eyes wanted to chase the sinewy mass towards some kind of impossible termination. Near its base there was a tiny hut, a thing lashed together of sinew, driftwood, and scales. Miria reached as deep within as she could, looking for answers, borrowing knowledge from the all-knowing.
This is Abzu, the primordial waters from which amber arose. The place where chaos first coalesced into solid matter. And those are the coils of Tiamat, the first of the dragons, a primordial serpent who made herself in the depths of this great ocean. She could never be fully dead, for she was never really alive. Always freshly killed, and at the edge of decay. The first flesh was carved from her and given form by elder things beyond our comprehension.
They drove the van slowly across the pebbled beach, towards the scale hut. By the time they reached it, it was clear that nobody had been there in a very long time. Wasp nests decorated every corner, and a foul, rotting mat of sargassum had formed against the seaside wall. Inside was a cold fire pit, some rusted metal pots and pans, and a bedroll that had been exposed to so much salt water that it had turned white and flaky. The inner surfaces of each scale had been scrawled with a madman's ravings, records of nightmares and religious ecstasies, demented dreams and chaotic exhortations, and everywhere a single refrain was carved around the edges of the scales. I must not eat of her flesh. Let's take that as good advice, shall we? Nuts and pemmican it is, unless someone fancies fishing. I don't think I'd want to eat anything swimming in those waters. We'd probably just be eating her second-hand. Yes, pemmican it is.
This place has been filled with silt a few times, but I don't think it's at the usual tide line. The regular tide line's pretty plain in the seaweed out on the shore. Let's make sure we're well above it, but not quite in the grass. And we'll try and get some sleep in the ford.
Unlike the unrelenting overlight of amber, it eventually became clear that Abzu had some sort of sun. As the light sank deeper and deeper behind the clouds, throwing everything into twilight, the wind and the waves died down, replaced by the hum of locusts in the seagrass, and the distant calls of some kind of reptile or amphibian off in the marsh. There must have been some kind of bioluminescent algae clinging to the scales of Tiamat, for her shape could be seen like a long, winding, ghostly line both above the surface and winding on below it. A strange, shifting, twisted parody of the Aurora Borealis, just below the surface of the water, stretching outward until it became indistinct with distance, and then finally disappeared beneath the murk of a brackish sea. They drew lots to determine who would get to sleep when, and who got to have the back benches, then drifted into uneasy, nightmare-filled sleep.
We go to a world beyond what we know. We brave astronauts, we heroes.
Miria sang an old spacer's shanty to herself in a strained, nervous voice as she sat up for her shift. It did anything but make her feel any safer, or any happier to be there. She had killed every light and every display on her gauntlet, not liking how it had cast everything into a ghastly blue light. She'd been on frightening planets before, but this was different. This wasn't even a planet, not really. This was a place where all the rules of physics were negotiable, where things so impossibly big could exist, where law and chaos were palpable, living things all their own. And while for most of her life she'd taken comfort in the dark of space, the dark of the beach, mixed with the sickly glow of Tiamat's unrotting body, sent sprats slithering up and down her spine. She barely heard it the first time. A change in the pattern of the water, a splash, but it was enough to get her attention. She squinted out into the darkness, trying to see what had made the sound. Were the dark shapes sitting on top of the waves the same as they had been before? Had something changed? She thought she caught the minutest bit of movement in the dull glow. Then, cursing herself for doing it, she flicked on the light. She was immediately greeted by several sets of shining eyes on top of dark shapes in the water. Something was definitely out there, just beneath the surface. Something big that only allowed its eyes above the water. The light was enough to cause several of the pairs of eyes to sink beneath the water, leaving only one pair of curious, shining, vitreous orbs, drawing slowly closer, curious at the light. Miria's hand paused over the steering wheel for a moment as she did a nervous calculus. And then, throwing caution to the wind, she hammered down hard on the car horn, hoping to scare off whatever it was. The eyes vanished beneath the water as Edryk sat up with a start. Kale, who had been asleep in the chair next to her, grabbed his crossbow from on top of the squid's bag. "What's going on?"
I don't know, but I need everyone to be awake.
The tense silence stretched out. A minute. 2. Was there disturbances on the surface of the water, or were they just imagining it? I can't tell if anything's out there anymore.
I'll take a better look.
Edryk opened the van's side doors, placed his hands on the rooftop so he could get a better glimpse out at the water.
I'm really not seeing...
And that's when there was an explosion of surf as a massive scaly body erupted from the water, charging up the beach towards them with alarming speed, dwarfing the van with its sheer size. In the light of the headlights, they only saw a massive open maw, pale scales, and teeth the size of daggers, before the van was wrought with explosive force. Swords Against Madness is played, written, and performed by Brian C. Rideout. Editing, mastering, and audio production were from Stormhead Productions. All sound effects are licensed from Pixabay. This episode included the song King Edward by Mr. Smith, a Creative Commons by Attribution song distributed through the Free Music Archive. It also included the song Acid Core by Jumping Bunny, Cyberpunk Futuristic City by Impulse Music, Powerful, Stylish, and Motivational Indie Rock by Sound For You, Gritty Blues Riff by Catch-22 Music, Massive 90s Trip Hop by Musanova, Dead Sci-Fi Ambient by Everything Is Dead, Dark Ambient Soundscape by Dello Sound, and Danger by Sergei Pavkin Music. All made available through Pixabay and used in accordance with the Pixabay user license. The Colonist's Shanty was written and performed by Brian C. Rideout. I'm still fielding questions if you're interested in participating in my AMA. Got questions about podcasting, D&D, my general weirdness, Appendix N, or just about anything else you think might give me a laugh? You can find me at my usual places, at Swords v Madness on X, Stormhead Productions on YouTube, and Swords v Madness at stormheadproductions.ca. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, play hard, roll high, and think weird. We go to a world far beyond what we know. Be brave, my astronauts, be heroes. We bring the archives and the gene banks in tow. To find a new home, we'll be heroes. For parsecs fly by as we blaze through the sky, and soon light speed is ours. We'll age but a day as the centuries give way. Each second we leap by hours. Nothing but home will be true by our dawn. All we loved is in the grave. We raise hearts in prayer for our planet waits there, and all mankind will be saved.